Hey there, college football fans. What's going on? It is December 20th, and the college football selection committee has made their decisions on who is going to be representing the four-team playoff. And we've got Alabama number one, we've got Clemson number two, as expected, number three, Ohio State, and number four, Notre Dame, representing those four teams. And to talk about the lineup, the matchups, and what we can expect, and already some changes in the mix, Matt Zenitz joins me now. And first and foremost, we got the matchup for number one seeded Alabama will take on fourth seeded Notre Dame in the Rose Bowl. But here's the thing, the Rose Bowl has now switched locations. The Rose Bowl has now moved to Dallas. We'll kick off at 4 o'clock Central Time. And I just want to get your thoughts on this matchup, this seed, and what this kind of looks like.
I think everything is lining up to the fourth Alabama-Clemson national championship game in the last 6 years. So Alabama is going to be very much a big favorite going into this game against Notre Dame. Some of the early lines that are out there are Alabama is a 17-point favorite, and then I think Clemson matches up well going into this game against Ohio State. So I would recommend to people to get ready for this latest Nick Saban-Dabo matchup.
So obviously, as the selection show, the reveal was happening, somewhat uneventful. But, I will say this right off the top, out of the gates, to be able to get to this point in the season where we're talking about a college football playoff, we're talking about a national championship is pretty remarkable. If you think about all the challenges that we've faced and endured throughout the season, everything, the mountains that were really moved in order to make this season possible, obviously with all the protocols in place, the testing, during this pandemic, and to be able to get to this point. It hasn't been easy. There's still a lot of, skepticism around the fact that you've got a team like Ohio State who hasn't played nearly as many games as our SEC teams, and Alabama playing, 10 games this season, now 11 with the SEC championship game. So certainly kind of interesting to kind of, when you put that into perspective, that we've arrived where we have. But certainly exciting. And on the topic of the pandemic, the Rose Bowl was supposed to be the location of one of those January 1st college football playoff games. That has now been moved to Dallas due to COVID concerns. And here's another interesting thing to point out, and Matt, I'd get your take on this. The committee, I guess the chairman, has said that as of right now in Dallas, for that bowl game, for that playoff game, they will be allowed to have 16,000 fans in attendance. Whereas at the Sugar Bowl, where Clemson and Ohio State will be playing, there will be 3,000 fans allowed to be in attendance there inside the Superdome. So kind of interesting sort of factor there, and just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on the move, and with Alabama going with the pick to go to Dallas.
Well, it seems like it was a surprise even to Alabama, considering Alabama's official Twitter account, I think, put out how they were headed to New Orleans for their semifinal game. But at the same time, the top seed is able to share their preference on the location of the game. And obviously, committee chairman Gary Barta went into just the reasoning for the game being where it is. And I'm sure Nick Saban wouldn't mind either, not having some of the distractions that obviously can come along with being in New Orleans.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I guess, having the opportunity to bring 16,000 fans along certainly, changes the dynamic pretty substantially. Being in stadiums all over the country this year and really kind of getting a feel for things, whether there's fans in there, a lower percentage, no fans at all. I've been part of games that have seemingly had a higher percentage of fans, like many pointed out at Texas A&M. And then the lower percentage of fans. So it's just kind of been interesting to see how that shakes out. Just wanted to get your thoughts, because I think there was a lot of questions concerning the 5th and 6th, those on the outside looking in, that being Texas A&M and Oklahoma, being those two teams now on the outside looking in. And certainly, I think there were some people that were maybe hopeful and certainly thought that Texas A&M had a pretty good shot, especially after how Notre Dame played, how they did yesterday in the ACC championship game against Clemson. Just wanted to get your thoughts on sort of Texas A&M's stance and where, things kind of shaped up. Were you at all surprised with the way things unfolded today, or was it pretty much what you expected?
This is pretty much along the lines of what I expected. I think that Texas A&M had a legitimate case to be one of those top 4 teams, but at the same time, my expectation going into it was that Notre Dame would get in. And part of the reason for them ultimately being the number 4 team is not only did they get the win against Clemson earlier in the year, which is, I guess, the top win in college football this year, even though it came without Trevor Lawrence in there for Clemson. But to go along with that, they also had another good win over a ranked team with their win over North Carolina that ultimately, according to Gary Bardo, was a large factor in them getting in over Texas A&M, even though obviously in terms of the most recent performance for each team, the most recent performance for Notre Dame wasn't too inspiring in terms of them going out and losing by 24 to Clemson in ACC title game. One thing that I'll add in to go along with that, it's a shame for Florida that they lost to LSU, because if not for that, I think based on their showing last night, even though they ended up losing the game, that Florida would have potentially had a case also just based on what they did and how they looked against the number one ranked team in the country in Alabama. But obviously it was a moot point considering the week before they had lost to LSU.
Great point there. And before we let you go, just kind of wanted to get a couple updates. Number one, you had been reporting this throughout the season. Jaylen Waddle could potentially be back for the postseason game. And then the other question was Landon Dickerson last night going down with an apparent knee injury. Nick Saban had an update. It seems to be a pretty severe knee injury. Just wanted to get your thoughts on those injury updates and maybe what we can expect.
Yeah, Landon Dickerson. The fear is that it's a season-ending injury. Obviously, the season ends in a month or in 3 weeks or whatever it is at this point. But the fear is that he would not be able to be back for the playoffs. Haven't gotten a ton of new information this morning as of yet. I know they were waiting on their MRI results with him. With Jaylen Waddle, there's nothing of significance really to report right now. Continued to say throughout the course of this process, he's made great progress in his rehab. Obviously, he was a big cheerleader for them during the course of that game yesterday. And I guess we'll find out more during the course of the next couple of weeks, whether it's realistic or not in terms of him being able to play at some point during the course of the playoffs.
All right, Matt Zenitz, we appreciate the insight. Of course, the selection show continues on. We'll sort of know where other teams match up, other teams around the SEC specifically, and what these postseason bowl games are shaping up to be, and especially those New Year's Six bowl games that I guess the teams kind of on the outside looking in are anxiously awaiting those matchups. So, Matt Zenitz, appreciate you as always. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and fans out there, we hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday and the rest of this postseason in college